Lydan. Welcome to Ukiyoto. Today we will be talking about Angelfyre, written by Lydan Francis, if I am pronouncing that right.
That's great.
First of all, how are you and how have you been?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
All right.
Weather's very cold at the moment and there's rain coming, but other than that, it's great.
All right. So before we start talking about Angelfyre, can you tell me that how long have you been writing?
So I only started writing in 2020. I actually came up with the idea of Angelfyre back in 2019. I hadn't really written before. I wrote a little bit when I was in high school. And I had this idea in my head, but I couldn't really do anything with it because I was in the middle of doing a PhD thesis. So I was buried in that, and I started writing notes down and putting the ideas on paper, coming up with author's notes, not really intending to write a novel. It really wasn't the end game. It was just this idea that I had that I sort of became obsessed with, and I just started writing down notes, thinking I'm just gonna, once this whole PhD thing is over and done with, I'm just going to write it down and make a silly little story about it. So I finished my thesis and put it in middle of 2020. I submitted it for examination, and then suddenly this big weight obviously lifts off you. And I switched my focus onto actually writing about it. And it just avalanched on me. I can't explain it. I just became obsessed with the story. And soon the story became, it sort of went from a short story to a long story, and then I realized this is actually going to be a novel, and then I realized this is going to be an entire series. Sort of just became obsessed with it. So I've only been writing for 2 years, but I've got 5 books done already, and I don't seem to be able to stop.
So basically, we are reading a thesis paper.
Sorry.
Basically, Angelfyre is based on your thesis paper that you wrote, right?
Not really, no. It's a departure from that. So my PhD is in ocean sciences. It's I did my PhD in ocean modeling, actually, but it's writing that I do is very much related to that. I have a passion for planetary sciences and planetary physics. I love it, and that is why. And that's something which I exploit in my novels. I love doing that. So I use my professional scientific background in my writing to create these sort of other incredible worlds. And that's one of the things. And Angelfyre is this incredible craft that can go anywhere, and it exploits something which isn't really explored much in science fiction. And that is a lot of science fiction, outer space opera type science fiction tends to focus on the surface of the different planets or in outer space. But there's a space in between the two, these atmospheres within these planets that are absolutely amazing. And Angelfyre exploits that. It exploits this sort of unexplored space within science fiction. And Angelfyre itself, which is this incredible craft, and I still don't know how I really came up with the idea for Angelfyre itself. The whole story is based upon, the whole story developed from Angelfyre, which is this incredible ship. And it's basically, it's a technological singularity. It's a ship that has gotten to the point where it's no longer, it's technology that cannot be distinguished from life itself. It has effectively become alive. And it moves like a living animal, and it's just absolutely incredible in what it does. And it's just become this amazing vehicle to enable me to explore these different worlds and different settings and that type of thing.
All right. So what was your writing inspiration in Angelfyre, or all over?
Yeah, well, my inspiration was Angelfyre itself. I became obsessed with the idea, and I'd spent my life working in a museum aquarium setting, that's what I did professionally, and I exposed to animals, lots of those animals, hands-on experience with a whole range of different animals, everything from sharks to dolphins to seabirds to penguins, the fish, the people that work with all of them. And that gave me a lot of exposure to how animals are so incredibly well adapted to the environment. At the same time, I've got a passion for techniques as well. I've got a passion for, I love aircraft. I love looking at the design of aircraft, fighter jets and commercial jets and things like that. The latest one, well, it's not latest anymore, but like, for example, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, which is an amazing aircraft. But I always wonder about the limits of these things and how clunky they are compared to animals. If you ever see a bird fly, if you ever see a swallow flying, and it's incredible how they master their environment, how they're able to move through the environment in such a beautiful, elegant way. And I just couldn't help but think about imagine if we could take an aircraft and make it behave like that. When you think about it at face value, it's a silly idea. But when you begin to think about it deeply, it's actually quite an amazing thing. If you could do that, you could make them so efficient. You can make an aircraft use a fraction of the amount of fuel that it would normally use. And this idea got lodged in my head for years, and it slowly built, and it slowly built. And I started thinking of the creation of Angelfyre. And that was the inspiration. It was all this experience that I had with these animals and coming up with this idea. And I just became obsessed with it. I couldn't build one. I don't have the technology to build such a thing. So I wrote a story about it. I wrote a story around it. And that's kind of where it all came from.
Yeah, so in future, sometime someone will build the machine.
Yeah.
I hope so too. So, about the cover of the book and the theme of the book, how did you come up with the title and the theme of the book?
The title, I didn't know. When I started putting the notes down and working on the story itself, I didn't.
It's a fire with a Y. So it really makes me question that why. What made you come up with this theme of the book, and especially the title where it's the fire with a Y?
Yeah. So I experimented with different names. I didn't know what I was going to call it when I started writing it. And then I don't know, I settled on the idea Angelfyre because of what the ship looked like. I had sketches of what the vessel would look like. And it kind of just it led me to that name. I can't really describe the process or the thinking about how but it just kind of worked out that way. I originally came up with the idea of Angelfyre with an I, but it just wasn't unique enough. I wanted it to be absolutely unique. So I started Googling, obviously. I looked at Angelfyre. There's a whole bunch of novels out there with the name Angelfyre with an I. But then when I started looking, I thought, what happens if I just swap this? And I just got this weird idea. Let's swap the I for a Y and see what happens. It just gives it an interesting sort of unique sort of kind of feel. And there's not a lot of things out there that are called Angelfyre. I think there's a pro wrestler called Gabriel Angelfyre. There's a pro wrestler. There's a music producer called DJ Angelfyre. I think there's a belly dancer called Angelfyre. And apart from that, not really else. It's not really a name that was used. So it was unique. So I thought, okay, that's it. I'm using it. I'm taking it. I'm owning that name now for the series.
Right,
and
that's
yeah.
Copyright now.
Yeah, it's mine. I own it.
Yes, yeah, you have the copyright now. So congratulations with that. And now can you tell us about the book Angelfyre without giving away too much?
Okay, so the whole thing is obviously Angelfyre is this amazing ship that can go anywhere, and it's mysterious. It's a very mysterious. I call it a unicorn. It's a unicorn of a ship. It's mysterious in its ways and in its origins, where it comes from. And this young girl called Casey. Now, Casey is a Falchion. Some people might pronounce it Falchion, but and the Fel, one of the distinguishing characteristics of the Fel, they're much bigger than humans, but they've got very colorful eyes. They joined forces and they created this interstellar community. Within this community, they invited all these other different races to come and live, and built like this civilization. One of the things is that uh, uh, genetic hybridization of different species is strictly prohibited. They don't allow it at all. But what happens is that there's this disease that's passing quietly through the human race. It's a genetic disease, inherited disease called DMRES, which is degenerative mitochondrial regenerative, let me get this right, degenerative mitochondrial ribonucleic expression syndrome. It's quite a mouthful. And it's a devastating disease. What it does is that it's when people reach puberty between the ages of 10 and 13, all the mitochondria in their body stop functioning, and they have it like quite a horrific death. And it's undetectable, and there's a 50% chance it will affect them, and it's passed through the females. And there's no cure. It can't be detected. And these kits appear quietly on the black market, and what these kits are is these kits are basically a hybridization of fowl and human genetics that actually is a cure for the disease that parents can then use. And then they give birth to these falchion children who have these colorful eyes of the fowl, but they're otherwise human in characteristic. And Casey, who is the main antagonist within the story, is a falchion girl. And the thing about these falchions is that they're unregistered because they are technically illegal. They can't be registered. They can't get access to social benefits. It's very similar to the one-child problem they had in China, where you get these unregistered people who just can't access social benefits or welfare benefits, and they can't register. They can't get passports. They're anonymous. They don't exist. And the legal authorities are just trying to ignore them, the fact that they exist. So Casey is one of these people that are just trying to, like the other falchions, she's 17 years old in the story. She's trying to get by with a human foster mother who looks after her. So two parents died, and they're trying to eke a living selling artifacts on the black market and things like that. And it's a very boring dead-end life. She's got no place to go. She's got very little prospects of anything more than doing this for the rest of her life, and kind of stuck with that. And she stumbles across Angelfyre, a vessel that suddenly just does a full 180 in her life. And it's all of a sudden this vessel just opens everything up for her, and she becomes completely different. She suddenly goes from having access to nothing to access to everything. The ship does everything. It can take her anywhere. She can live on it for the rest of her life. It gives her everything she needs. It provides her with food and shelter and absolutely everything. And the whole story revolves around that. It's like, what would you do if you had such a thing that suddenly landed in your lap, and you suddenly go from this one extreme to the next? That's sort of kind of like the gist of the story. But then the story builds around Angelfyre and how Casey develops a relationship with Angelfyre, and Angelfyre's onboard synthetic intelligence. It's kind of like AI, but way more advanced. And it has an avatar called Angel, who's actually a human-like presence that has these emotions, but she doesn't know what emotions are. She's like an artificial intelligence that can't interpret them. And Casey helps her with this, and they become very close friends. And the whole story revolves around that, between them and Casey with Angelfyre, and what she does with Angelfyre, and where she goes and how she helps people. And the whole series develops based on that.
All right, so it really does sound very interesting, though. And I wanted to ask you that what was your character building process like? Was there any? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So I let the characters develop themselves naturally. You come up with the basics for the character based on how you want them to serve the narrative of the story. So you come up with the basics of who they are, what they are, and what their basic backgrounds is. But you don't really know. The characters can only build with the story. So the character building process is pretty simple to begin with, and I let the characters develop and build with the story. And towards the end of the story, you understand the characters so much better. They're completely different people, even for the writer, for me as a writer. at the end of the story, at the end of writing the book, the characters are completely different to when I first introduced them into the story. And they can surprise you in such amazing ways. And then I often end up going back to the beginning of the story again. And I did this especially with Casey, because I didn't really know what type of person she was until I developed her through the course of writing the novel. And then I went back to the beginning of the novel, and I actually expanded and expanded a bit within the beginning of the novel of what type of person she was and what her background was and things like that, because by that time I knew her better. So I often end up doing that when I introduce a character and I develop them, and then I realize they're completely different. Sometimes a character could just be this ancillary character that comes in just to serve a certain part of the story, and then suddenly they just develop into something completely different that just surprises you and blows you off your feet, and you realize they're actually becoming a more core essential part of the story. And then I spend more time with them, and I go back and I try and develop their background a little bit more and things like that. So the character building process is something that happens naturally during the course of the novel. It's not anything I force. I don't force the writing. I let it happen naturally as possible.
So was there any real life character that inspired you to write the book, or any of the character?
I wouldn't say, I don't know. I don't know if there's any single real life character, but obviously the inspiration in terms of characters comes from the people that I work with, the people that I have worked with. It's a collective of all the different people. It's all these different people that I've worked with over the years. And I think they are all the inspiration that go into these characters. The characters that I create are built from little bits from all sorts of different people that I've been with. You know, especially my colleagues that I work with, working with animals. You know, this amazing passion that people have, that working with and looking after animals, working in animal rehabilitation for many years, just an amazing sacrifices that people make to try and help these animals that are, you know, in peril, in trouble. And it's you know, that is probably a big inspiration for a lot of the characters, especially a character like Casey.
Okay, so I think I know the answer to this one, but I'm still going to ask you, who was your favorite character in the book and why?
Well, naturally, yes, Casey. He's the main antagonist. You know, and I created, you know, you start off with your main antagonist and you try and build a story. The story was being built around Angelfyre, but I needed somebody of a certain character and quality to be the one who was going to fly this amazing machine. And that was Casey, and I created her for her story for that purpose. But I treat her like she's not just a character to me. She's almost like the daughter I never had. I've been married for many years, but myself and my wife made the choice not to have any children. But Casey, when I started writing the book, Casey would have been the same age as if we had a daughter when we first met. They would have been 17 years old when I started writing the novel. So there's a little bit of that inside there as well. So Casey's kind of like the daughter I never had, you know, and what I'd like to see in such a person, I guess. A little bit selfish, but you know, that I think is the reason, you know, it's a very good reason, I think, to me, why she's my favorite character.
I think it's not selfish. It's really sweet. It's very sweet. And may I ask you that? Do you think that you did justice to all the characters, especially Casey?
Difficult question to answer. I try, but sometimes, like I said earlier, sometimes you create a character and you bring them into the story, and then you realize as you develop the story that there's so much more to that character, and they need more deep exploration. You need to go into them, but sometimes the story doesn't allow you to do that. And what I've done in novels further on so far is that, for example, there's one or two characters that were also ancillary characters brought in just as part of the, you know, as Casey's going through the motions and doing this, you know, this through her adventures and things like that, and she comes across these various different people she meets. And there's one particular person that I actually then, after working with that person, they were only supposed to come in for a short period of time, and after working the interaction between them and Casey, I realized that there's more to them and I need to bring them into the story more permanently, and I brought them in to a later novel as one of the main characters inside. That when you bring a character in, there's more to them. And the book, in the way that you're writing them, you're not really doing justice to the type of character they are. And in cases like that, where I see that huge potential, I always try and bring them back in later on in the story and build a better, because they have such potential and incredible value. So I bring them in later. So on.
Okay, so may I ask that what kind of message did you want to convey in the book, and do you think you did a good job with it?
It's an interesting question. I never really wrote the book to convey any sort of message, but the one that came out, and it stems from me. Casey has, and you'll pick up in the book that Casey has, through her experiences and what she is, like, she has a pretty dead-end, boring life before she finds Angelfyre. But the one thing about her, the one quality of her character is that she's the type of person who doesn't poison herself on hope. She does what has to be done. She has a saying that, and this is actually my saying, it's do what needs to be done regardless. Put aside your own selfish ambitions and do what needs to be done for the betterment of other people. And that's Casey's sort of drive in her life. Comes out in Angelfyre as well. Even though she has this amazing ship, she can go anywhere. She can escape. She can go to anywhere she wants to. She doesn't have to, she doesn't have to be subject to her boring life anymore. She doesn't have to follow rules or anything like that, but that doesn't stop her from using Angelfyre as a thing for good. And it comes out that she faces these incredibly still faces these incredibly challenging situations, and that drive inside her to do whatever needs to be done, even if it means you're going to die. There are situations where she faces where she more than likely won't survive it, but she does it anyway. She just says, put aside all your ambition, your hope, everything, and just do what needs to be done. It doesn't matter what the outcome is going to be. Get in there and do it, because at the end of the day, if it's going to benefit other people, that's what needs to be done. Even if it means self-sacrifice. And to me, that's probably one of the single messages that comes out. As the story progresses, as the novel series progresses, Casey she effectively becomes a superhero. She puts aside her own self-ambitions, and she uses what she found to the best of its potential, because she feels that she needs to help people. And does what she thinks or feels. She puts it all aside and she goes out to help people. And that is, do what needs to be done regardless. I think that is a message I think that I'd like to say that the book is trying to convey.
All right. So a lot of people have read this book as of now, right? So what kind of responses have you received so far?
I haven't received many responses, apart from the people that I've shared the book with myself personally. Various friends and family that I've shared the book with, that I got very positive responses from. At the moment, the book's only been out for about 2 months. I'm still sort of in the phase of trying to get the book recognized, that people know it exists. The science fiction landscape is very vast and very competitive. There's a lot of people all shouting for attention. Literary landscape in general is like that, right? So it's I'm competing up against a lot of people. It's been a lot of work over the past 2 months, because the publishing process happened very quickly and very suddenly. It took me a bit off guard, and it's been a lot of work trying to develop social media presence, trying to get the website up and running, trying to get, for example, Goodreads book profile pages up and running, and then obviously going down the route of trying to get reviews done as well, so people can look for reviews. People can do reviews and post reviews on it, so I can start getting honest opinions back on it. And it takes time. I'm still waiting for those to come back, so it's still too early to tell what the responses I've gotten so far have been very positive, mostly. It's looking very promising, but I haven't got a full feel of it yet, because it's still going to take some more time. One of the things that I find challenging is trying to get reviews done of the book can often be very challenging. You approach a lot of reviewers, like I like to approach reviewers who do it as a hobby, because you get more honest feedback from those types of people, but they're so inundated with so many books that a lot of them simply can't. They say that, well, I can read your book, but it's only going to be in 6 months' time, type of thing. So I've tried to spread the book as far and wide as possible. I use paid for reviews, which is helpful. I'm very careful with paid for reviews. I make sure that, for example, one of the conditions is that it must be an unbiased. In other words, the review must be honest. I don't want to pay you to give me a positive review. I want to pay you to give me a review, an honest opinion. So I'm very, very careful about that. Fortunately, a lot of paid for reviews on to services on that you find are, that's the way they get. That's one of the first points they say, is that you're going to get an unbiased, honest review. Just remember that as you pay for it. But yeah, so slowly but surely over the next few months, I'll start getting these various reviews, because it takes a few weeks for people to actually look at the book and start giving feedback.
Yeah, I think it's very good to have a non-biased review, because you know if there is a room for improvement or not. So that's great. And coming to one of my last questions, are you working on anything else at the moment?
Yeah, the rest of the series. So
Oh,
what I can tell you is that I've written 5 books out of the series already.
yes.
The second one has been accepted now by the publisher, by Ukiyoto, and I'm going to submit all of the artwork and the final manuscript now this week. So that's going to be released the next few weeks, and that's the second book. The third book is also written. I'm doing final polishing of that as well, and those 3 books make up like a trilogy. So this first one, Angelfyre, and then the second one, which is coming out now, is Angelfyre Serenity, and the final one, which is Angelfyre Eternity, which make a trilogy in itself. And it builds the whole series to it builds this initial part of the series to like quite a dramatic sort of peak right towards the end, where some amazing characters come into it, and Casey has to face off against an amazing sort of Casey, the protagonist. I think I mixed up the word protagonist earlier. Casey, the protagonist, comes up and against an amazing antagonist, which makes you question the word antagonist as well. It's complicated. It becomes complicated, but it's at the same time amazing. And I can't wait. The third book is my favorite book out of all of them. And I can't wait until that one comes out. That's more than likely end of the year that one's going to release. And then there's already another 2 books as the series continues. How many books I go to, I don't know. It has to run its course. I finished writing the 5th book. I was busy with the 6th book. I had to put it aside when the 1st book got published now, so I could start focusing on that. And hopefully once things calm down a little bit, I can start sort of calming down and carrying on work with the 6th book. But the series as well, and I'm sort of well far ahead with all of these, with all the different, with these books in the series so far. And it doesn't have any sign of abating. And there's even a spin-off series that I've started writing. Angelfyre itself is young adult, so it's conservative in it's careful and conservative in the story in a way, to make it appeal to a broad range of different age groups. But I've started off a spin-off series now that is purely adult, and it's very explicit. That's completely, it falls within the same, it falls within the same sort of storyline universe, but it's aimed specifically at adults. It's more raw, sort of, there's more sort of, it's a different character. It's more raw in its approach. So it's more to appeal to adult audiences rather than the main. But the main will always be a young adult, broad range of ages that I try and have it appeal to.
All right, so that's great. Thank you so much, Lydan, for being with us and for answering all our questions. We are so glad to have you here. And also, you can find Angelfyre on our website and also on the link down below. So do purchase, do read the book, and yeah, that's it. So thank you so much, Lydan. It was really nice talking to you.
Thank you very much. It was nice talking to you too.
Thank you. So we're going to sign off, and we'll see you again on the next book.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.